Hello and welcome back to Live from the Bottom Half. If you're joining us again from our last few shows, welcome back. If you've joined us for the first time, you've missed out on one show, so you have to go back and watch it all and subscribe and do all that fun stuff. Today, what we are talking about is the Vanguard boxes. More widely than that is what we're talking about is list building from a completely new person's perspective. 99% of all players, when they start with an army, will go to the Vanguard box set because it's cheap and it's got stuff in it and you can play with it to a point, which is something we will be discussing today. Some boxes, because everyone in here is very iron, they turn up, they go to the blacksmith and they're like, right, I need some armor and I need chaos armor because it's branded. Not all armies play like that. The next army we're going to talk about has not got a single union or anything that unites them other than the fact they share a cave. So this is the Gloomspite Gitz. 570 points in this box, so we're at the lower mid end of kind of the value on the table of what we're looking at. And it has a lot of everything in here, which, yeah, a loon boss, which I think is actually one of my, well, I don't think, it is one of my favorite models in the game. I love the lore of these guys. I just think is a fantastic looking piece. Squig hoppers, which I think are one of the worst looking pieces, and so on pure taste wise, this is not my thing whatsoever. Then we have 20 moonlight stabbers and shooters, which is very brave for people to pick if they're not good at rolling, and 3 rock chogos. Which I have armies of these things, and they are just something else. So this is the Gloomspite Gitz. I think I've probably said that, and it's written on the slide for all us who can't read. But to someone who doesn't know this army, this is like a big mix of nonsense. Cool. And someone who plays this army and therefore is actually qualified to talk about this army. What's going on?
So the one thing I will certainly say with the Vanguard box, you can actually take the 10 squig hoppers, but the sprues come along so you can actually build them as Boingrot bounders as well. So you do have the option of either 10 squig hoppers or 10 Boingrot bounders. But if we go into the next slide, I'm just go through some of the rules and everything. Now, like Michael said, Loon Boss is a great little piece, particularly in their new book and everything. He has the standard profile for a hero, which is a 5 attacks, 3 threes -1. But because it's destruction and because it's Gitz, it doesn't get a set value of 2 damage. No, it's D3. So you can either go up or down. Normally down. The great thing about the Loon Boss, though, I have to admit, though, is his ability of all-out attack. So like when you normally do all-out attack, you get +1 to hit. He then gets extra bonus for the unit he does it to. Any 6s to wound do a mortal wound in addition. So it's a great piece to synergize when you're kind of getting a unit ready to buff out. Now that is to a Moon Clan unit. It can't do it to like your trolls or anything like that. So apologies, guys, on that front. But he's just great. And you know what? He was one of the last models I painted. And I was really kind of like against it. I was like, I'm not going to enjoy painting this one. And when I finished it, I was like, actually, I really do like this model. He's actually really quite nice.
Amazing.
So yeah, like I said though, you then get 10 squig hoppers. And now the difference between squig hoppers and Boingrot bounders, from a lore perspective, is squig hoppers, they've got the Gitz basically find a squig they can hold on to, bounce into battle. And that's basically it. Majority of the time, they die, either by getting eaten by the squig themselves, or by getting killed by the opponent. It's destruction, it's Gitz, expect it's kind of like a Skaven laugh. If they survive a battle, or if they impress the boss and they survive 2 battles, they're then seen as kind of like almost quite elitist. They're adorned with lots of rusty armor or any armor they can find their hands on. They're given a lance and then they become a Boingrot bounder. And so now they actually run into combat a little bit better armed and they do a bit more damage. And they have a better save. So in the instance of the squig hoppers, though, from a rules perspective, every time they've made a normal move, charge, run, or retreat, you get to pick an enemy unit that they've bounced over, and they roll a dice for each model in that unit, and on a 4+ it suffers a mortal wound. Fantastic. For a Boingrot bounder, they have a similar sort of thing, but basically on the charge, you roll a number of dice equal to the Boingrot bounder unit, and on a 4+ they do mortal wounds. So another opportunity to do it on that front. The squig hoppers, in terms of the combat, you're just looking at rolling as many dice as you can, because with each squig hopper you have 2 attacks on the rider and then 3 attacks from the squig. More often than not, the squig's doing all the work. The rider's just there for a bit of a laugh. When it comes to Vanguard Bounders, though, on the charge they get an extra rend and an extra damage on the lance. So that is then 4s, 3s, -2 for 2, I believe it is, off the top of my head. And then you've got squigs underneath. So they have a bit of versatility, and depending on how you want to build them and how you want to run your army will depend which ones you want to use. But still, both units are very viable. You then do get stabbers, which can actually be built to be shooters. To be honest, the stabbers bonus that they have is so long as they have at least 20 models in the unit, they can actually contest objectives from 9 inches out instead of 6 inches. I've had this against opponents where they kind of question why I'm standing outside it, and then they realise why. And it's quite a janky rule because people aren't used to it. They also can have, in both the shooters and the stabbers, they can also have netters in their unit. You can have up to 3 for every 20 you have in there. And then basically any enemy units within 1 inch of that unit get a -1 to hit. It used to be more convoluted rules, they've streamlined it so much more. If you do take the shooters, basically so long as there's at least 10 models in the unit, they have two shots on their bows as opposed to just the one. But you are hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s, no rend for 1 damage. My personal opinion would be to keep them as stabbers and to get that kind of ability to contest objectives outside of the 6-inch bubble and go for the 9 inches. Moving on from there then, you then, okay, like you had on there, sorry, stabbers on there, you then get the Rockgut Troggoths. Now these ones you do have to build with Rockguts, unfortunately you don't get the option to change them into Fellwaters. But the great thing about the Rockguts are they're almost, you see them almost as an anvil unit. They are standard 4 up, 5 up, but under the moon they then become 3 up, 5 up. And then if you take one of the faction pieces called Glog's Megamob, they can heal not only in the hero phase, but after they've fought in combat. So they are a good piece. Now they have their own throwing rocks bit, which is just a bit okay. So basically they do mortals on a 4 up, I believe it is, 1 rock per troll. But it's just nice little like chip damage. And then they have a good damage profile. I believe it's 4 attacks per model, 3s, -2 for D3 damage. Oh no, for 3 damage, sorry, 3 damage, flat 3 damage. So they can actually produce some damage and capability when they want to. In terms of this Vanguard box though, it's a great starter piece. It's giving you everything you may need and more. Because the great thing about Gitz is you either go in one direction, either Moon Clans or Trogs or Squigs, and you just go out on with all of them in one go, or you can take a mixed army, and this Vanguard box gives you the opportunity to do that. By perhaps a second Vanguard box, now you've got even more choices to go from. Great starting set, in my opinion.
Okay, that's interesting because as I said, my thoughts when I saw it was like, there's a lot of choice in the Gitz. Like, there's a lot of different armies you can build. If you're an old school fantasy player and for some reason you want to have lots of grots, night goblins, you want to have those wizards. I know Scarce is not around anymore, but you got like
you have a squig boss with a squig attached to him. Yeah, a giant squig on the side. So essentially it's Skarsnik, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got that stuff. But again, so when I saw that box, I thought to myself, that's a menu of choices that might paralyze them. But you're saying no, actually, this is all pretty great starting place to be.
It's down to taste and preference. So, like, if I'm telling you now, like, taking a mix is hard to play. I personally am taking a mix for myself with future lists. But this box gives a starting player or a player looking to get into the army an opportunity to experience all avenues, be it Trog, Squigs, or Moon Clan. So it's certainly, for me, I would suggest it would be a good one for someone looking to start into the army.
Jason, as someone who is well tested against the Gitz, what do you reckon? What are you thinking?
Squig hoppers. If you can make them into Boingrot bounders, this becomes a whole different level because I know how powerful those Boingrots can be. Rock guts I love. I'm still not overly taken with Moon Clan the Grots yet, but I know people do take them. They've got some fun rules around them as well, which is a bit of a laugh. For what you get, the box is good. It gives you a nice selection of units. From what I know of the army, if you're going to go with Trogs, you go heavily into Trogs. So if you're looking for a Trogs list, probably not the best box to buy, because a lot of this you're just not going to use. But then I wouldn't be surprised if we do see sort of mixed lists a little bit, because Boingrot Bounders are doing really well at the minute. Trogs are crazy powerful. I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but Moon Clan can have some fun bits around them as well, with other units in the army. So I do like it. I think it requires thought and quite a lot of addition to make it a viable army.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
But then it's 570 points, so you've got plenty of space there to play around with.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What might be good then is what if we talk about the Dawnbringer's box next, and then we talk about what it actually might be the fact that you would think about combining them.
Yeah.
So as with the Fire Slayers, the Gitz have also been given their Dawnbringer's box. I'm not sure if everyone's getting a Dawnbringer's box, but these guys are, and that's what we're going to talk about. So let's not worry about the future. Here comes some like 1970s punk band names. Yeah, I've got Rabble Rouser. There's Squid Hoppers, which I imagine can be Boingrot Bounders as well. The Gubberpalooza, and then 10 Squig Herd, which have been controversial is probably not the right word, but have definitely been, to me, controversial. But I've been the subject of conversation. So, Paul, let me back to over to this. Now, there's a lot of new stuff in here, if I'm right.
Well, honestly, there's only one new thing in this. It's the Rabble Rouser hero. Yeah, the other models have always been available. Saying that, though, the Gobblapalooza, when this book first came out, or when the book first came out and everything, Gobblapalooza was gold dust. Everyone kind of discovers, like, hang on a second, they can actually do something for my army now. They synergize really well. And they disappeared off shelves. Wonder why? Well, let's look into the rules on it. So, first of all, let's stick with the Rabble Rouser. He's a great model to have if you have some monsters in your army. Basically, he is exactly what he sounds like. He rouses the troops, but more so, he kind of aggravates the monsters around him who want to go and hurt him. But then, if an enemy unit gets in the way, then what's to say they can't take out the frustrations on them instead. So basically, once per battle in the shooting phase, he can release his unit of bat squigs. Basically, you then can pick 3 different units within 12 inches, and each of them suffer D3 mortal wounds. Now, they do actually have to be different units. You can't do all 3. You can't do 3 units into one sort of thing. On top of that, though, whilst this Rabble Rouser is at least 6 inches away from an enemy unit, he gets a 4-up ward save. So that's pretty cool for any goblin, to be honest. Also, the big thing for him is that when you pick a friendly monster to move, you can goad it by the Rabble Rouser, basically meaning you can run and charge. But the rule is it has to finish closer to the Rabble Rouser than it started at. Downside to it, though, if ever it does finish within 3 inches of the Rabble Rouser, that monster will do D6. Will do its attacks into them, or do D6 mortal wounds. I think it is something along those lines. But the thing you do with this sort of thing is you kind of give the Rabble Rouser, you teleport him to the other side of the board. Perhaps you bring this Dawnbringer Vanguard Box in with a unit with an army of giants. This Sons of Behemoth. You teleport this fella across the board, and then you goad the giants to you, meaning they get run and charge for pretty much the whole entire battle, and you don't worry about the Rabble Rouser because he's cheap on points. Going on though, you then get the Gobblepalooza. Now, there's lots of rules around the Gobblepalooza. I won't go into all of them, but basically you get 2 spellcasters in there, and then they also have 3 other members of the crew. And you have what's called nosy bots. And basically each, at the start of your hero phase, or in your hero phase, should I say, you can activate one of these here nosy bots, and it buffs a unit around them. In addition, the spells that they get, oh hello, got a flying at me. Fungoid Cloud is a real nuisance for opponents. I've had lots of people kind of really shout at me, well not shout at me, but grunt at me about it. 12-inch range, -1 to hit, bubble. Doesn't sound much, but with so many minuses to hit with this army, it does benefit and add up. And they also have another one called Mesmerize, which can stop an enemy unit from issuing or receiving commands. They also get a 4-up board save from battle round 1, and then it kind of goes up 5 up on round 2, and then 6 up from round 3 onwards. You then do get some Squig Herd in this one. Now, admittedly, you only get 10, and ultimately you want way more. It says 10, you actually get 10 and 2 herders, so it's a unit of 12. You want them generally in 24s, if not 36s. The reason being, and admittedly they have nerfed the rules, they go running up the field. They're 2 wounds apiece, so you get 24, that's 48 wounds. If you've got 36 models in there, that's 72 wounds in the unit. They're easy to chop down, but then again, when they take a battle shock, because they can't issue or receive any commands, they have a bravery of 3, they battle shock, and then the number of squigs that run, you roll dice for the nearest unit within 9 inches, and on 3 ups, that unit takes mortal wounds. So you want squigs to run. And then at the start of your hero phase, as long as you've got the little feathers pushing the squigs forwards, for each herder you roll a dice, and on a 2 up you bring back D3 D3 squigs. If you roll 1, this herder gets eaten, but that's still a risk that you're willing to take on this one. So yeah, it's definitely a case of Squig Herds are a good option, but they have been nerfed, and to a point where I've tried using them several times now, and I've actually swapped them out for Vanguard Box. But in terms of this Dawnbringer set, it's a good set to have, and perhaps if you're running a destruction army and you want something that will bring some numbers in for you, ultimately it is definitely a good option. From a Gitz perspective, would you take them? Maybe. From a box set like this, at least you're saving money. That's what I would say. So yeah, perhaps it is worth it. Yeah, definitely.
So is it, if say you're starting all over again, your house is robbed, and they only take your Gitz, but because they're kind, they leave you a Dawnbringer box and a Vanguard box. These are really weird thieves. They're just weird. What in the Gitz range do you think would add to this?
So from a hero side, you certainly want to consider some of their heroes like Scragbot. He's a great utility piece, synergizer, and a buff model, as well as doing his own spells, so a great option. But then you really got to consider what avenue you're going to go down, and this is something that I'm kind of really playing with at the moment. It's like, do you want to go Trog heavy? If you do, you want a Trog boss. Definitely want a Trog boss at the moment. He's a great auto include, and when you kind of set him up correctly, it takes a lot, and I mean a serious amount of effort to bring a Trog boss down. But yeah, you got hero options depending on what you want to go for. If you can get Squig heavy, then you may want a Squig boss on Mangler Squig. You may want a Squig boss on a Giant Cave Squig, which he can then go and he can charge in, and as long as he's within 12 inches of a Boygrot Bounder unit, he strikes, and then he activates the Boygrot Bounders immediately afterwards. Another great synergy option there. And then you have got a plethora of different magic users as well. Now, the one thing that these boxes don't tick into are the spiders. There is a spider element to the Gitz. They are kind of seen as the underdog of the army, but they do have versatility, and they can do damage. They have great potential to do mortal wound outputs, and so that is something else to consider. But you got 4 like mini factions grouped into one big book here. So there is plenty of options to bring in. You may want Fell Waters, which have great vomit attack. You may want to have Spiders, which have the ability to come in on reserve. You may want to go with the Moon Clan, like Jason said. You can have Fanatics. They can hide inside of Moon Clan, come out, and could cause also devastation. so many options when it comes to Gitz. It's one of the reasons I love them a lot, and one of the reasons why it's kind of my main go-to army, because I have so much opportunity to swap in and out the units. So there are plenty of options, and really there's nothing bad in the Gitz book from my perspective at this time. So yeah, lots of options.
Yeah, you do bring up that the spiders aren't represented in this box, which is a shame because when the gifts come out, I was looking to purchase an army at that time, I suppose more Skaven stuff, and the spider army was the one I was thinking of. And then I was told by a Gitz player at the Quest of Champions has told me, don't, just don't, you won't have fun of it. But the more I read the raw scrolls, I don't think that was great advice. I think there is stuff there that is very good.
There's one person called Toby Resnick. He is a spider enthusiast when it comes to Gitz, and he has made it work. He has gone 3-2, and I think maybe even gone 4-1 with them, and he's just gone pure spiders. And when they do mortal outputs, they can really cripple enemies. I know that from one tournament, he did about 68 mortal wounds in 5 games from his spiders. So that's nothing to shrug off at all. They can be very swingy, though. Just like all Gitz, to be honest, they can be very swingy. Either they're going to work their hearts out, or they're just going to flop over and die. So, yeah, you're taking that when you come to choose that army anyway.
Yeah, welcome to the Skavendom and Gitzdom, I guess. That is just how how some armies play, which is good because we need those kind of armies around. Any last thoughts or questions, Jason? Oh,
you're talking to me. My headset's playing up. Give me 2 seconds.
Okay, no worries.
I'm going to switch headsets. Be right back.
All right. In the meantime, we'll talk about Jason behind his back.
Yeah, because I know the next set of slides actually need Jason's involvement. Ultimately, I would say from a Squig Hub perspective as well, they are still usable and they do have potential. But ultimately, I've tried them in the last several games of mine, and they hold up the enemy for like a turn or so. I've had them in a group of 24, and they hold them up for a turn or so. But because they've been they were so bad at one point, so really strong at one point. Everyone sees them on the board, freaks out, and eliminates them. And ultimately, there goes like a quick bunch of points, which could be allocated to something else. So that's why I've personally taken them out. But they do have potential. Sorry, Jason, there we go.
Yeah. Are you back with us, Jason?
Yeah, sorry, my headset decided to break. So, yeah.
Well, I was asking if you had any more questions or thoughts about the Gitz before we moved on.
Only one, and that is the Dawnbringer box. If you're going Squig heavy, I love it. Does the Rabble Rouser really fit into this very well? You want the monsters, you want the big things to go running and charging in, and that's something you're not getting in this box. We've chatted about this before. Everything else in that box, I can't say anything about it. They're really, really good, but it's just that. I just don't see how it synergizes with possibly other bits in there. I'm not saying it's bad, just saying other bits possibly.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
No, go on.
The one thing about Dawnbringer's box is it's kind of advertised out to the other armies in destruction, because the one thing they do say is you can't take the Dawnbringer's war scroll for the Gitz into a Gitz army. It has to go to any other army. You can take these individual models and pay these separate points for them. But ultimately, yeah, you're right, Jason. That Rabble Rouser is purely in there. If you do have Sons of Beira, if you do want to take perhaps Beast Claw Raiders, that little piece that could perhaps just make your army work a little bit better. And then you've just got a multitude of different goblin units running around causing havoc or just holding up enemies. So yeah, it's a good point though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's another thing as well. Thing about a box is synergy. Does it all go together well? Maybe that leads back to what my question was like: is there synergy in this box? Otherwise, is that synergy?